First and foremost, I want to thank Frost Bank. Tracy Ariano could not be here today, but Frost has been sponsoring our one seminars and is sponsoring this one. Okay. So let's see. I see Gail. Gail is here, and Gail from Family Promise is here, and she's going to introduce our speaker, and then we'll take it away from there. So thank you, Gail.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. Yes, my name is Gail Nelson, and I'm with Family Promise of Clear Creek. We're really excited today to have Becky Turner. Once we hear from Becky, then, as Peter said, we'll open up the forum to Q&A. Introduce Becky. She is the president of KBT Consulting and serves nonprofits in strategic planning as well as individuals in life coaching. She has almost 25 years of nonprofit experience and has worked in local, national, and international organizations. And since 2010, she's consulted with hundreds of nonprofit organizations to help them effectively advance their missions as well as deepen relationships with donors. One of her primary clients since the beginning has been the Barnabas Group, where she led the Houston and Dallas chapters and now serves as national managing partner. In the 2000s, Becky was the executive director at Life Houston in Houston, Texas, and she's honored to have revamped their team's ministry model and reopened the maternity home in 2006. Prior to that, she served as a development director for Texas Right to Life and Georgia Right to Life, where she more than quadrupled their income in just 4 years' time. Becky has also served as a missionary in Moscow. The national presenter for the Great Turnaround, Becky raised almost $3 million in 2012 and 13 at 19 different fundraising banquets for local pregnancy centers across the nation. Becky is particularly gifted at helping to maximize commitments per person by speaking truthfully about the organization's mission with both clarity and grace. And with that, Becky, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and making this happen. It's kind of a unique world. Unprecedented times are for sure the word we're hearing from a lot of places. And it's unprecedented for a lot of reasons, but I think one of the most unique reasons why it's so unprecedented is because we are in a time frame where we have a super high anxiety. I mean, we don't know what tomorrow is. We don't know how long we're going to be in school. We don't know when the stores are going to open. We don't know if we're going to survive this health-wise, financially. So high anxiety. But then we also have high isolation. We have put all of us into all of our different little groups, and we aren't engaged in our communities anymore, and our work groups anymore, or our social groups, and it's bringing about definitely unprecedented times. And I think what's also interesting is we also can't do anything but wait. I think it's interesting. I guess it was 2 weeks ago or the beginning of last week when it was said, hey, we need masks made, and here's the pattern that you use to make those masks. And there was actually a run on sewing machines at Walmart, and they weren't really ready for the toilet paper, but they're catching up with it, and they weren't really ready for paper towels, and they were catching up on that. But they were definitely not ready for sewing machines because people just want to do something. During Harvey, I think it was once you got okay, everybody was settled in, then you wanted to do something else. And there was a run for volunteers to, clean out sheetrock and get rid of debris, be very much involved. And we as nonprofits have an opportunity to help people in this high anxiety, high isolation time to actually do something. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. I thought we'd take just a minute, and there's a poll that I want us to jump on, look at, answer, and then we'll jump back into what I want to share. So Montoya, do you want to, is it up? And I just see me. I don't see anybody else. So how is the poll up and ready?
Let me get on that. You can keep talking and I'll launch it once we get it going. I have 2 people logged in under this account, so it's not letting me shoot a poll. So
all right, well, it's no tragedy if it doesn't happen. Just, you know, if it's great, no worries. We'll make it happen. So let me just jump right into a couple. I'm going to go through about 3 different points, and I'm going to talk about 2 things, or 2 key areas that we need to talk about as leaders, and then I'm going to get into some real tactical things about what we can do as nonprofits to make a difference. First, we're not going back to how life was before. I mean, there's no going back to status quo, and so it's not a time for us to be stagnant. I've heard a lot of people say, I'm just going to hunker down, and when it's all over, I'm going to come out. And I think that's not what we can be doing. Our key thing that we need to be doing right now is actually keeping momentum moving forward and keep the flywheel going. And I'll talk about some of the ways you can do that for your nonprofit. That's one of the points that we need to make sure we communicate. Number 2, we need to make sure that we are continuing to say, we will get through this. You know, in the end, it's all going to work out. And if it hasn't worked out, it's not the end. There will be a day that we'll be able to go back and be about life. When that will be, we don't know. As I said yesterday in a webinar I did, you know, as long as college football happens, then I'm going to be happy. But I know I'm ready to get back to doing what needs to be done and what I want to do, and get on a plane and go see my friends and make things happen. I was blessed to live in Houston for many years, and my favorite hole in the wall place is at Clearbrook and Edgewood. Edgebrook and Clearwood, whatever. The exit just past Hobby. Favorite hole in the wall place, Mexican place there. And I'm just praying that it will be successful, because I'm concerned about small businesses, that they'll be able to continue to move forward. But we will get through this. And then the third thing is, we do know when this is over and when life starts going back, it's going to be different. There's going to be a new way of life. There's going to be a new way of working. I think work from home concept is going to be just multiplied across the board because of what's happening. For those of you that were around in 2008, there was a real key shift that happened in the nonprofit world after 2008. And then as well as in 2010 and 11, when we had the oil prices dropping in the Houston area. Our donors became more savvy, and they were much more interested in actually return on investment. Really, prior to 2008, for the most part, donors would invest if they believed in the mission of the organization and they liked the people that were running the organization. Oftentimes, they weren't looking so much for the ROI, but there was a shift after 2008. And I think there's going to be a big shift for us here in our world today and in our culture today, in the nonprofit world. And the question is, are we going to be ready for it? And I think a key point is to just continue to keep moving forward, even if it's not perfect. Using technology, I mean, I just heard Peter talking about, they're working on how do they engage with their kids when they're not in school anymore? Man, they're going after it. And there's a little bit of repurposing that needs to be done. Not mission shift, you don't move off of who you are as a mission, but let's figure out how do we fulfill this mission, but do it in this new era, in this new way. It was, I mean, even like Saturday night, and talk about, don't worry about getting things perfect. Saturday Night Live totally did an entire show and everybody was at home. And there wasn't any slick stages, there wasn't any perfect costumes, but they did a show and it was engaging, it was entertaining, and just like every Saturday Night Live, sometimes some hit and some didn't hit. But they went about and did what it is to keep the momentum moving forward. And so I just want to, don't get caught in perfectionism and not do something because you're not sure if you know exactly how to do it. Just start moving toward that, and you will, even if you fail, it's going to be momentum moving toward the next steps. So 2 key areas that I want to talk about. I'm going to tell you, just stop me if we need to do the poll or whatever. I don't know where we're at. Are we going to do the poll, or what do we think?
It's not, it was loaded up on my end and now it's not looking like it's saved and logged in. I'm so sorry about that, Becky.
No worries. It was just more information than anything else. And so we can move on from there. So, all right. So 2 things that I want to talk about to you as a leader, and we're all leaders. I don't care whether you're the executive director or what your role is in the nonprofit. We're all leaders. And so I want to talk first about some things that you need to offer much of And then I want you to make sure there's a few things that we need to be sure to do. And then we'll get into the tactical part of it. As a leader in our world today, we have to offer much understanding and patience. Number one, we have to give much patience and understanding to ourselves. We're living in a different world, and we're doing things differently than we ever have. All of us working from home, we have more distractions. Our world is full of distractions in general, but when we get home, it's even more full of distractions. Whether it's one more load of laundry, or the dog's barking, or your next door neighbor is blowing off his driveway and the blower is driving you crazy. A survey was done at University of Southern California, Santa Barbara, and they said it takes 23 minutes to get back on track because of distractions. And so because of that, we are not going to necessarily be as productive as we are when we're in the office. I've heard a lot of people, and people much wiser than me and much more focused on productivity, they're talking about, okay, the first week I'm going to write a book, and then the second week I'm going to do this, and the third week I'm going to accomplish this. And we aren't getting all done like we thought we could because we had all this extra time, we think. And so, and a lot of that is because of distractions. So you've got to give yourself grace. We also need to be sure to give understanding and patience to others because they're in the same situation. As I mentioned earlier, I don't know if everybody was on the call or not, but I have a friend, my pastor, his wife's a teacher. They have 4 children from 3rd grade to 10th grade, all 6 of them trying to do work and school and church from their home. And it's challenging. And so they have to be accommodating one another. And we in the same way need to be accommodating to our coworkers, our other house members, anybody else that's living with us, and make sure that we give much grace and much patience in this time. To help with that, the second thing you need to offer much of is communication. At this point, it is impossible to over communicate. Seriously, internally or externally. There will be a time where it will be, but for now, over communicate. And the reason why is because there is so much information that's out there right now. We are watching the news at an escalated rate than we ever had before. Even like, again, in the Harvey days or the 9/11 days or Katrina day, anytime any national disaster had come about, it ramps up the information overload that we receive. But again, it's a shortened time. I live in Georgia and we're on day 31 of lockdown and we still have 15 more days. That's 46 days that we are going to be looking at a TV wondering what's going on and what the input is. I have checked my local news, the radio, we all have lots of communication out there. So what we need to do is make sure we continue to be in front of all of our internal stakeholders as well as our external stakeholders, meaning your donors as well as your clients, and communicate what's going on. And we'll talk a little bit later about a communication plan that you can put together to help do that. But talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here's how life is and how we're repurposing or what we need help with, or we're going forward in that. So offer much of patience, offer much communication, and then lastly, offer accountability. And this is where we need to face the facts if necessary and say, hey, look, times are hard. We might need to make some changes. We might need to furlough people. We might need to lay people off, or we're a good run for 90 days. But then after that, we're going to have to readjust and make some moves that are necessary. And also accountability in the sense of if someone said they're going to have a project done, then they need to have the project done and hold people to that during this time, because we can be we're so easily distracted. So just keep coming back, and we can do, if we've offered patience and we've offered much communication, we can say to our coworkers, George, you said you would have this in, or Mary, you said by Friday you could make it happen, and where are we at? And so make adjustments as you need to. So as a leader, offer much understanding, patience, accountability, as well as communication. And to help do those things, there are a few things you should do. Number one, create a rhythm. First, create a rhythm in your own personal life. It's very interesting. We've all been on a plane before, and we've all heard the flight attendants give their safety instructions at the very beginning. And I do my best, because I fly a lot, to at least be respectful and not be totally ignoring and talking to the person next to me. Might be reading a book, but not checking the person next with me. And on all those safety features that they tell us, and they're all important safety features, right? Tray table up, you know, computer not in the back of the thing, but actually underneath so it doesn't fly and when it goes through. Even your seatbelt on. All of those things, they'll give basically a cursory glance through the plane to make sure those things are taken care of. But what do they always make sure and double check is the oxygen mask. You know, they make the announcement that you put the oxygen mask on first, and then they walk through the plane, and every single person who has an elderly person next to them or a child next to them, they reaffirm it, that they need to put their oxygen mask on first. Even if there's been several times where I've been beside an unaccompanied minor, and they've said to me, make sure you put your mask on first before you help this kid right here. And I don't even know this kid, but make sure you help these kids right here. And so always put your oxygen mask on first. So that means physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, make sure that you take care of yourself and do those rhythms. Get up, get in the you know, go for a walk for 20 minutes, eat well, and get good sleep. Those are key things you need during this time. The other thing you need to create a rhythm is also just in your work life. The first time I worked from home was in 1989. And that was before laptops, before computers. I mean, I had a spiral notebook and a box index cards of what I needed to do. It was a great time. I had more time, I felt like, at that time than I do now with the technology I had. But I would get up every morning, I would dress, I would actually walk to my neighbors. So I guess it's not officially work from home. I went to my friend's apartment, which was 2 doors down from me, and I would stay there and work during the day. And before I went home that night, I would plan out my next day. And so let me just encourage you. I mean, this is good for any time, but especially during this time, again, with so many distractions, plan the night before what you're going to do the next day, and develop that rhythm that you're going to do that, and then be consistent. Be consistent in a rhythm in your personal life, be consistent in a rhythm in your own work life. The second thing you need to do is to recalibrate goals. Even just today, I was reading a friend who's a business leader, and she had these plans to launch this Mac basic course, and it was going to go out May 1. And she said, I'm not going to make it. And for her as an achiever and as a doer and as a planner to not do that, it was very, very hard. But we need to understand during these times, we do need to recalibrate goals because we're in a different world, unprecedented times, as I said at the top. And remember, we need to change those goals both in the deadline, like when is it going to be due, as well as maybe the content of what it is. Is she still going to do the Mac basic course? Yes, but it's probably going to be the fall before it comes out. See, this is the way you need to think about deadlines. It's just wet cement in the future. And all you got to do is grab that arrow before it gets dry, pull it, shoot it again, and shoot it off. So she had it on May 1. Before she got to May 1, she pulled it out and shot it forward. So recalibrate those goals, move those deadlines, but then also possibly change the content of what they might be. Instead of closing 100 new contracts, someone might only be able to close 25. Instead of reaching 50 more kids this year, it might be down that you need to reach just 20 more kids this year. So make sure that you don't hold yourself and feel guilty because you're not reaching those goals. So recalibrate as necessary, but continue striving forward in those goals. And then lastly, create a rhythm, recalibrate your goals, and then lastly, gather good counsel around you. I appreciate the Clear Lake Chamber of Commerce at this time doing this. There's a whole lot of people that are offering a lot of good content, and I hope mine's valuable to you, but there's other people out there that are doing things as well. Look to your board, look to your staff, even look to some of your key top donors for counsel on what's going on, but then also look outside. There's a lot of webinars and seminars that are going on about marketing, about email blasts, about how to use technology to do what you're doing, about banking, about the CARES Act, how you can do that. What do you do with HR? What's a furlough versus a laying off, and how do I manage all those things? So go get counsel in those areas that you need, and don't try and figure it out yourself. Again, it's unprecedented times, and we're going to overuse that word, I know, but it is unprecedented time. I have never seen experts giving away content at the level that they're giving it away right now. And across all industries, productivity, HR, marketing, banking, finance, stockbrokers. I'm getting more wisdom, more counsel about so many different areas that are out there. So you probably can Google it and find a webinar that you can learn more information about that. So let me encourage you to do that. So we're going to offer more grace and understanding. We're going to communicate more. We're going to hold people accountable what it is, but we're also going to create a rhythm in our life. We're going to recalibrate those goals, and then we're going to gather good counsel around us. And then how do we do all that, and what does that mean to day-to-day and donor development? And that's what I want to spend the last 15 minutes or so with you talking with you about. First, let's talk about phone calls. Classic, old school, pick up the dial, phone calls. And so you have a fantastic reason to call right now with what's going on, just to check on people and how are they. It's a poem I heard by John Maxwell yesterday. He quoted it, he didn't write it, but I can't quote it for you, but I can tell you the essence of it. There aren't good and bad people in this world, because everybody's got a little good and every bad person's got a little bad. A little good in them. So there's not good and bad people. There's two types of people. There's people who lift up, and there's people that lean against. And so during this time, your goal, I would challenge you to make sure that you are the lifter of your donors at this time, that you call with words of encouragement and of hope, and those things that we said at the beginning. It's going to be different. It is going to get over, and we're going to come out of this stronger. Hey, listen, your values and who you are as an organization are not going to be determined, but they're going to be revealed during this crisis. And if you really care about your donors above and beyond a dollar sign, then right now is a fantastic reason to call those people and reach out to them. Ask, how are they doing? How is your family? How is your health? Ask, what's going on with school if you know they got kids. If they own a company, what's going on with the business? You can have a series of questions already pre-scripted that you want to make sure you ask people about. Call and be in touch. Even if you leave a voicemail, have a nice script ready to go. Leave that voicemail. However, it has been some surveys that have been done, and people are getting actually live phone calls 40% more often in making those calls. And so call. And let me encourage you also, once you get off the phone, you talk to George. Hey, George, how are things going? Good. Glad the business is still kicking. That's fantastic. Hey, what are any of your concerns? Any way we can help? All right, wonderful, great. Well, George, thanks so much. We'll talk to you, on the other side or whatever. Click. Now, probably George is going to say, hey, wait, before you go, how are things going in your organization? Or what's going on with the kids? Or how are you doing with residential stuff? Or how are you responding to this? How's your staff? And if they ask, then you have the freedom to talk with them about what it is, but don't bring it up. But whenever you get done and you hang up that phone, have a note card ready to go and write, Dear George, it was great talking to you. Glad to hear business as well. Hey, thanks for your concern about our organization. Blessings, Becky. Drop that in the mail and get it to them. Lift these guys up, lift your donors up during this time. And it will, in the end, it's going to come back. If we serve people, we will get served in return. So calls. If you're a full-time development person, there should be 2-3 hours a day you're making phone calls, at least. Executive director with other things that you need to be doing, it might be more like an hour and a half. But I would still say call. Make calls. And an email is not the same as a call, and a text is not the same as a call. We can communicate stuff, information, but really lifting people up happens in a call or a Zoom face-to-face if you can get them that deeply into it. So second thing, make calls. Second thing, events. Do not cancel your events. Postpone them. And postpone them to as soon as you think it's possible for it to happen. So I know a lot of people had spring events. Postpone them till July. And if you need to push it to September, then you push it to September. But don't cancel that event. It just almost shows defeat. We're doing this. We're still doing it. We're just postponing it. We're going to do it at this date, or we're going to do it at that date. Whatever date you can get on the schedule as soon as possible. And in the meantime, if you need to do something, let me encourage you to do smaller Zoom events. 8-10 people. Again, smaller is better than larger. If you can get 8-10 people on a call and engage them and sharing what's going on. At this point, you are talking about the ministry. You are giving an update of what's going on. You are talking about your response to COVID-19. And you have real reasons why you're on the phone and that you're sharing with them. And you don't have a hard ask at the end. You might have something about, hey, we need continued support to make this happen. Here's our web link, or you follow up with the email. But have these smaller Zoom events can be very, very powerful and very impactful for you. Also, because donors love collaboration, if you are in collaboration with any other organization, any other nonprofit that you're working with, I would encourage you to kind of have a panel and bring 2 or 3 nonprofits together and talk about how you as a collaboration are working together. And it could even be folks that are here on the chamber. I mean, multiple organizations that are working together. You can do that and then share. It's 1 hour, it's a lunch and learn, it's on, it's share, it's open for Q&A, and you're done. And you could follow up. So that is how I would handle events, and I would say happen all the time. For those of you guys that are like, this COVID-19 has actually ramped up your work for whatever reason, whether your direct services with food banks or workforce or any of those kind of things, you might even schedule a Facebook Live or a standing event at 10 a.m. on Thursday morning. You're going to hear from the executive director. And for the next 5 Thursdays at 10 a.m., you're coming on and you're telling them this is how we're responding to COVID-19, especially if you're like right in the heart of it right now. I'd encourage you to do those things. So keep calls, do the calls, don't cancel your events, postpone your events. And number 3, letters. I already mentioned about handwritten letters, but I would still continue to, I cannot emphasize that enough. Handwritten letters are really critical. But also direct mail. Direct mail is we need to not back off anymore for direct mail. And for some of us, we might need to ramp up what we do. It's not a stopgap. It's not going to fill everything, and it's not going to work for, it's not going to replace a banquet or any of your spring events, but it will give you something to kind of just a filler in between this time, and follow all the appropriate rules with direct mail, and make sure you've got a really great envelope that has, would encourage them to open it. And yesterday I just thought this was great. The seminar I was doing, they shared, let's do a postcard with a QRL. No, that's not it. A QR code. That's what it is, where you can just scan it with the phone and take it to the website and tell the story, or scan it and do a video or whatever it is. So don't hesitate on direct mail, because for many people, if the commute alone, they're gaining an hour a day. And in the greater Houston area, they're gaining at least an hour a day not having to commute into the office. So they're grabbing the mail, but it's not being stacked up on the desk in the kitchen, and they have a tendency to look at it more. So continue to, don't be willing to take a little risk and do some direct mail pieces, but follow all the appropriate needs for that. So calls, events, letters, digital. Right now, the users on social media, Facebook, Instagram, of course, Snapchat and TikTok and all those, but for most of our donors, they're going to be on Instagram and Facebook, is way up. So take advantage of this time where people are actually on there, and provide good quality content that's just telling what's going on and how you guys are making a difference in COVID-19, or some things that you've learned during COVID-19. Just communicate using that digital. It's also interesting for anybody that has ever done ads on Facebook to promote what you're doing, or to get people further engaged in what's going on. Ads costs are actually going down. Businesses are pulling out from their Facebook ad budget, and so the algorithm is causing it to drop down, and we're able to reach more people at a lower cost. So let me encourage you to do that. A focus that I would go with your donors is make sure that you take some time to develop those mid-tier donors. And your mid-tier donors are really about probably 50%. It's your bread and butter. It's not your bottom 25, 30%, and it's not your top 25, 30%. It's the ones that are your bread and butters. And for some of you guys, that's $1,000 a year as a midterm donor. Some of it's a mid-tier donor. For some of it's a $500 annual gift. For others, it's $1,000. It's $10,000. So be sure that you run some reports, find who those mid-tier donors are. They probably are long-term donors, and make sure you engage with them and reach out to them, and even work specifically to try and engage them to even give more at this point, which is unique. And then lastly, a tactical thing you could do is develop a very clear communication plan. In development, what I've learned is that it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be consistent. And I think more oftentimes in development, we're waiting for the perfect letter or the perfect email, the perfect call, or the perfect event, when sometimes we just need to be out there doing it and continue to move forward and consistent. So what helps you do that is to have a communication plan. So I would have a communication plan that's made up of really 3 things. What are you going to communicate? And you can communicate wins, you can communicate challenges, you can communicate your testimonies of clients or what's going on, changes, gratitude, what's going to happen in the future, how you're repurposing, lots of things you can communicate. And that should be a part of the plan. The plan should also be how you're going to communicate. We're going to do it via email, we're going to do a video, we're going to do phone calls, we're going to do live stream, however you're going to actually communicate that. And then when you're going to do that, daily, weekly, monthly. On Mondays, we're going to send an email and we're going to tell them about the changes that are happening because of COVID-19. On Wednesday, we're going to do a live stream, live from the field, and the executive director is going to talk about what we're doing to respond to what it is. And on Friday, we're going to give a client testimony, and we're going to do that on a video that we're going to send to everybody and post on social media. So just have a plan, start working that plan, and then reevaluate. And in our world today, we used to plan a year. You know, right now we're like 90 days. I would not have a plan longer than 90 days, and I would look every 3 to 4 weeks. How is this doing? What's the response? Do we need to change anything? And so those are key things that you can do right now, regardless of where you are in development. Make calls, postpone your events, and have local events. Be sure to use direct mail as you can. Do digital. Focus on your mid-tier donors, and then develop a communication plan that will allow you to actually communicate what's going on, because as I said right at the beginning, you cannot over-communicate during this time. But again, have grace. Slow and steady wins the race. And so don't bite off more than you can chew, but just enough that you can continue moving forward to keep that flywheel going, to keep the momentum going, so that when we get on the other side of this and life becomes the new normal, we can be ready to respond to our donors, to our clients, and to our staff. And so I hope this has been helpful. Emails Becky@BeckyTurner.com. And if there's any way I can help, let me know. I don't know if we've had any questions. I'm gonna throw it back to Peter and the team, but I'd love to answer any questions. And also, if you send me an email at Becky@BeckyTurner.com, you can see my calendar. I'm more than happy to jump on a 15-minute call and brainstorm through, just be a thought leader for you. I'd be happy to do that during this time. So anyways, enough of me talking. Peter, and let me see somebody else's faces other than me. So back to you guys.
Peter, are you there?
Mute now. I'm unmuting. There I am. Okay, good. Thank you so much, Becky. I appreciate it. You can, if you go to the chat, if you have questions for Becky, statements, things that you might be doing, confirmations for Becky. One of the things that really resonated with me from what Becky was talking about is the messaging. Trying to get, you know, especially since we work in the schools, people are like, so I guess your staff's off. It's like, no, we're doing everything we can. But the thing is, our messaging changes almost daily. And it's slowing down a little bit. Maybe, you know, every 3 to 4 days things change because we're getting more information, but it has been quite constant. So, well, yeah, again, feel free to turn your cameras back on. If you're looking for that at the bottom left, you can do, it says start video, and you can unmute yourself.
And just to speak into what Peter was saying, if people are asking that, that's just a great way to go back and say, and I mean, you could even start the subject line, so are we not doing anything? You know, ... And they're like, oh, okay, are they not doing anything? And it's like, no, you know, and we still have needs and they're still repurposing. And, you know, some of these, the very clients you're serving, these students you're serving they're high risk, but in a different means than the COVID-19. And so, because now, whether it's a, you know, food shortage or what their needs might be, and definitely, you know, they're sitting at Chick-fil-A on Wi-Fi trying to do some digital learning. So
exactly. Another thing that really resonated with me, Becky, is you talked about being methodical. And I think the people who are on this call right now are in leadership roles. I'm just recognizing the people on here. And one of the things that I find myself doing is protecting my direct staff or protecting my volunteers from this flood of information. It's just incredible what's coming out. And it's like, as resources develop for my staff, for example, I don't just say, okay, hey, I've got 55 different resources. I want to send them to you. What I've been finding myself doing is sifting through them and getting my management and administrative team to go sift through this so our staff doesn't have that stress. And I think that's an important role. That's really what resonated with me, Becky, is you talked about being methodical and really having things planned out. So thank you for that.
Well, I think even with that information, what's good about that is that you could just have, you know, Peter's points from reading, and it comes out every Thursday at 4 o'clock to your internal staff. And so you just get a running list over here and you're like, this is a great website, read, you know, and so you gather 7 and you give them 2, right? And say, this is what it is.
Absolutely.
I want to jump in. I really enjoyed your presentation this morning, Becky. And I actually serve with 2 different boards here in the area, and they're actually very, very different. One for literacy and one for rescue and finding homes for pets. Yeah, and it's been interesting because I feel like you really see such different personal reactions when something like this happens, and you actually see, okay, this is obviously their love, what drives them to be on this board, and this is what drives them. And I've learned, and Peter probably knows this, that the type A organizational person in me has really come out in droves. And I'm like, guys, we need a much stronger strategic plan. We need one that pops. We need one that communicates more. You know, we need to bring the story of the animal shelter forefront and how we're doing it. And I like what you said about slow but steady. That no, everything's not going to be perfect, but I'm seeing this as a real time that I'm going, wow, I can really play with this document and really present a much better picture of our organization. And it's kind of, for someone who has been type A, even in my retirement, I like what you said about creating a rhythm. I've always had that rhythm in my life, and in retirement, I wanted the rhythm to still be there, but totally meaningful, you know? And I think what you're saying about plan the next day. Now, one day this week, it was ordering meat at the Bay Area Meat Market and picking up fresh produce myself, you know, but just those little things, you know, that I'm really excited about. One of my board's strategic plan that I felt was lacking, and but I'm seeing everybody's strengths come to the table and go, well, this is, you know, they're not saying it, but it's what they want to focus on. And so I think our board, one of the boards I'm on, is going to be very different after all this is over with.
Thank you, Ava. I do have two questions for you, Becky. This is from Jessica Peterson. She's at Interfaith Caring Ministries. She said, we have our annual golf tournament scheduled for May that has been tentatively postponed until July. At what point is it reasonable to relay messaging about moving forward with plans? That's the first question, then another question.
Okay, I would say now. People are already thinking about what's going to happen in May, and you already know it's not going to happen in May. and go ahead and say, look, we're tentatively scheduled for July 17th, and we'll follow up. It's, again, it's a touch.
Yeah.
It's a touch that you're not asking for money.
Right.
So the more touches we can do that way, the better. So I would absolutely say, okay, this is what it is. And if you know all the details, great. If not, just say, save the date, July 17th. We'll
Right.
confirm.
Right.
And continue reaching out in that touch. And if you need to reschedule. But again, so many unknowns in our life right now. Let's give them some knowns.
Yeah.
We're not playing golf in May.
Exactly.
We do know that.
We're doing it in July, but also they know that may change. And so
Exactly.
I totally agree with you. Very good. The other question that Jessica had is, my board already discussed reaching out to donors for donations, but should we first have the touch point you mentioned to check in before we make a formal ask?
I would go back, Jessica, to the board and ask, do they know that all of the donors are well and COVID-19 has not negatively impacted them? And if the answer to that is they know all the donors are fine, then send it on. But we know this is a global, citywide, countywide, statewide, nationwide impact. And there's a probably good likelihood that some of those donors have not. So I would make the touches to as many, especially your primary key donors, before I would make a formal ask. And that's why the mid-tier is good, because your lower donors are probably going to be negatively impacted because of hourly wages and just life is different. They might not be at the same level. And our higher end donors, because the stock market is kind of doing this and their funding is often based on how the stock market does.
Sure.
They're not ready to give, but those mid-tier donors have a chance to be a little bit more stable even during this crazy time. So I would say reach out, touch them first, and then at least, those key donors.
Someone also made a comment about personal wellness. Do you want to speak more to that? Because that's very, very important right now. So. Yeah,
I think that it's probably more than ever. We need to make sure that, because a little bit goes back to control, and there's only one thing any one of us can control, and that's right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so let's control what we can control to the best of our ability to be as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
And that goes from eating and exercise. And I'm right there with them. I mean, I'd be doing Oreos if they were, I'd be mainlining Oreos if they were around. And so that's why I don't have them in the house, right? That meme that came up that said, so how does the 600-pound life work? Do they call you after you get to this certain point? And so I'm not in any ways not saying it's a challenge, but let's physically make sure we're as best we can be, mentally as best we can say. So take breaks. Man, at the end of the day, no screens after 7 p.m. There's no need to have any screen. I mean, you can have the TV screen, but what are you watching, right? Tiger King has done all of its seasons, and there's no, baseball. So get a book out, play a game. And so mentally, emotionally, engage Facebook. I live alone, and so engaging is very important, even though I'm an introvert. And then whatever your faith is, make sure there's that connectivity, to your faith to continue to build that. So I can't emphasize that enough.
Cool. If y'all look in the chat, I'm going to see if you can actually, sorry about that. Someone's in my way now. Richard just posted in here. He is on the board of the AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals. They've developed a list of COVID-19 tools and resources that are on the website. It is afphouston.org. So if you need some tools, please. And I'm putting that again in the chat if you want to go check that out. But since we have people on the line, are there any other resources that you can either post in the chat that you've seen that's been helpful? Again, as directors or leaders in our organizations, we're the ones who probably need to sift through it for our employees and for our volunteers. But if there's a condensed version.
There is, I would check out riseupworld.com.
Rise Up, say that again.
Riseupworld.com. It's actually a Facebook Live that's there on day 11. It was only going to be 20 days, and so there's only 9 more days left. But it is everything from marketing to productivity to finance to, it's a whole big array of stuff. And like yesterday, it was John Maxwell was on and John Gordon was on, and it is it's about an hour and a half. It's high energy, and so I usually can only do about 30 minutes of it because I'm an introvert, and then I've got to walk away from it, kind of thing. But I would just, it's nothing new, but it's one of those things that you just kind of play it when you're getting ready in the morning or something like that, because you can play the Facebook Live the next day and just grab a nugget. I like it because I mean, that's a big thing. That's a big push to me on that, as well as just a lot of the kind of free books that are out there in general. This goes back to more mental health, like audiobooks for kids is free right now. And even though it's for kids, I like it. It has all of like the classic literature is on there and, you know, adult version. And so I'm doing that. Any of the, again, this goes back to wellness, lots of the museums you can do, you know, engage in those kind of things. So those are just a few things that I would encourage.
So are there any other introverts on the call that can give us tips on how to handle this, having to stay inside? My wife's an introvert, so she's loving this. She's giving me great tips. It's like
all the introverts have like, this is their life. They have like lived for this. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Becky. Thank you again. This has been very helpful. Montea, do you?
I'm going to welcome Jenny onto the line so she can tell us about some of our upcoming webinars.
Okay, that's
the next couple weeks.
That was you.
Sure.
Thank you, Jenny.
Awesome, guys. So glad to see all of y'all. I'm so happy to see faces. I'm an extrovert, so whew, this is a rough time for me. But I did want to tell you guys, we have 2 more webinars coming up in our series for COVID-19 webinars. The next one is actually tomorrow, Thursday, April 16th at 10 o'clock. We're going to be talking about distance leading, so how you maintain cohesion and motivation with your remote teams. So if you're interested in registering for that or any of the other ones I mentioned, you can do that on our website at clearlakearea.com. The last one in our series is going to be Tuesday, April 21st at 2 o'clock. Talking about how change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So we thought that would be pretty powerful in these times. And for fun, we have our business after hours virtual happy hour today at 4 o'clock. So we would love for y'all to join us. We're just gonna relax, have some fun, do some networking, share some 30-second commercials. Ms. Kat Clemens is on the call. She's gonna be hosting that happy hour along with Jacob Bigger. So again, if you guys wanna register, you can still do that. We hope you do that in the next hour so we can get the Zoom meeting information out to everybody. So that's really what I have.
Montea, can you post those things in the chat so that we have them handy?
Sure. I don't have the links handy, but I can let you know the times, and everything that you can RSVP for is on our website, which is clearlakearea.com. Including the happy hour one. We still have time, so make sure you go there. But I'll post the dates and times. I'll start typing those up.
I think I spelled that right. clearlakearea.com. Okay, good. Very good. All right. Any other words of wisdom for the group? Thank you, Becky. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chamber of Commerce. I really appreciate you all hosting this. It was very beneficial, and it is good to see so many of your faces. I am an extrovert, so I love these Zoom meetings when the people appear, you know. And it was very nice meeting you, Becky.
Nice meeting you too. Thanks so much.
Anything else that you have, Jenny, for us? Okay. Okay. There is a happy hour tonight at and go there. They are the 16th, the 21st, the 15th. You can do the happy hour tonight if you want. Go to the website. Y'all take care. Be safe. Be healthy. Take care of yourselves. Bye.